welcome to Life in Spain Unfiltered. Okay, today I originally planned to talk to you about Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez and his recent woes at the NATO summit. But when reading into that story this morning and catching up on news, I stumbled across a strange old news release that was from the party connected to the party Vox, which is the far right party here, as you would expect, are very critical of the socialist government. Now, they're suggesting that Pedro Sanchez couldn't cough up this 5%, which NATO are asking for, because the party were too busy spending money on prostitution. Now, of course, this is not the most, let's say, a pretty bad taste joke, this, but where there's smoke, there's fire, because recently there's been a case here called the Kodo case, which is a corruption case, and there's been various stories linking high-ranking politicians to prostitution. Now, this got me thinking about the sex industry in Spain and how it works here, because it is a fascinating subject and also one that many people won't be aware of. So today, I thought I would delve into the sex industry in Spain. Right, where to start? Well, there's, like a lot of things in Spain, the prostitution law here is a grey area. So it's neither illegal or illegal. Put some context on it. If two consenting adults wish to have some sort of sexual transaction and money is to be involved, they can do that behind closed doors and in private, and it's not against the law. Where the law states that these things can't happen is you can't, as a sex worker, go up to someone in a public place, be it a street or a bar or a nightclub, and say, offer yourself up for sex for money. Now, that's what's called soliciting, and like in many countries, it's what's the problem with the law. Now, what people probably won't know here is, in Spain, the country is littered with brothels everywhere, which are usually masquerading under the titles of nightclubs and hotels, but operate usually in full view of the town itself. To give you an example, when I arrived here in 2002, I was driven from the airport by the agent who was to sell me my future bar. And we went past one of these nightclubs. And I turned to the guy and said, look, there you go, nightclub. We have a late night drink there tonight then. And he said, well, if you weren't there, mate, you'll be very popular because that's a brothel. And he promptly explained to us that the nightclub in Spain is generally a code word for brothel. Now, if you've ever travelled in Spain, so for instance from Malaga to Madrid, there are various truck stops, small towns there. And as you go up there, you tend to find various brothels or these nightclubs littered along the route, obviously catering for long-distance lorry drivers, etc., etc., etc. The thing about prostitution in Spain is it raises a lot of issues about human trafficking and women being mistreated. Because recent statistics have showed that they reckon that there's somewhere between 300,000 and 450,000 sex workers working in Spain. And they reckon between 80 to 90% of those are actually illegal immigrants. Now, I was reading some statistics earlier, and it was suggested that a majority of these people, or these sex workers, are coming from Latino countries, with Colombia being the highest number of sex workers here in Spain. Now, to make things clear, the classic kind of thing you have here, you have your street walkers, which you see in various town centres or various areas of many towns, and you have these brothels. But the thing about these brothels is they are not technically illegal, because the building itself, as a hotel, is offering rooms which these girls legally rent, and in cases are catered for, so have breakfast and dinner included in the price. And then downstairs there is a bar where they tend to congregate, and various people will come in just for a drink and mingle with the girls. Now, what goes on from there, you can use your imagination. But this is where the illegal side of it will probably come in, because I'm sure there's a bit of soliciting going on. Due to the fact that there's a lot of illegal people involved, there tends to be other illicit behaviour going on alongside the prostitution. And I couldn't find any recent reports showing me figures, but from a report back in 2014, they reckon that 9 billion euros, or almost 2.5% of the GDP of the country, came from these illicit activities, be it prostitution and drugs. Unfortunately, the two go hand in hand. Now, to illustrate this, I had a friend staying here, many, many moons ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago. And he had spent the night drinking in my bar and then decided to clear his head by walking back to his hotel, which was probably about a 3 mile walk from my bar, and he had to walk through the centre of town. Now, the following day, I met up with him, and he goes, "You won't believe what happened to me last night." He goes, "The walk was lovely until I got to the town centre. Then in the space of about 20 minutes, I must have been approached 10 to 15 times by various girls who were offering me sex." Now, this this is a common practice here. And if you go online onto various YouTube, look on YouTube, you'll find videos usually taken by tourists who are on hotel balconies of this illicit behaviour. Because generally in the centre of town here, well, I speak for where I live in Fongarola, it's unfortunately African ladies who are looking for drunken tourists. Now, when I lived in London, this kind of activity was called a clipper, which is basically someone looking to take advantage or cheat a drunken person. So what generally happens is they will lure these drunken tourists down a dark alley or into a dark corner, and then rob them and not provide the services which they have been promised. I imagine rob them with their trousers around their ankles. Now, why the police can't catch up with these people is a mystery. Maybe it's because they have to catch them in the act, or they're not doing anything wrong. But if people are filming it from balconies, you would think people could film it. The police could do the same thing and catch them at it. Right, now back to these brothels, which is always a fascinating thing, and the way they operate, especially in this town here, because we have in our little part of the world a female mayor, very good mayor to be fair, and she is very, very into women's rights and things like that, promotion of International Women's Day and things like that. And I always find it a bit hypocritical when she's doing these kind of things, when she knows perfectly well there is brothels open in this particular town. At one point here, there was up to 5 different brothels, be it private houses which are being rented and used as a makeshift brothel with a madam in charge, or these hotels stroke nightclubs. Now, what to do with this problem is what to do. And I think it splits society down the middle 50-50. With Spain being a very Catholic country and having very Christian values, you think that people will be against it. But there are statistics which say that 1 in 4 Spanish men have visited a prostitute within their lifetimes. Also, which is probably more shocking, and I've heard this countless times, it was like a common practice here for fathers to take their sons into these places to lose their virginities, which for me, I just can't get my head around. But it's definitely a worry. I personally have no problem with a person deciding what to do with their body. It's their choice, their body. But I think there needs to be some sort of control of it. If we take the example of, say, Amsterdam in Holland, which would be a good template to use here. Basically, those girls in Amsterdam, so I've been reading today, not only are they unionized, they have their own union, they pay their own stamp, they're self-employed, and they also make their own tax declarations. On top of that, they're required once a week to do a health check to make sure they're not carrying any disease and they're healthy. So by doing this, the government is controlling it, limiting it to certain areas, and making sure it is controlled, taking away the illegal aspect of it. Because the place which is near where I am here, or currently sitting probably 10 minutes down the road, is quite famous for all sorts of things, allegedly the sales of drugs and other things, and illustrated by the fact that just after the quarantine here, the bars and restaurants were opening back up, and it opened up itself, the whorehouse. Not directly as the bar and the hotel were open, but they opened the casino next to it, but the girls were operating out of the casino. You can imagine not many masks were being worn there, and during COVID, having a whorehouse open is probably not the greatest thing. But what surprised me about that was there was actually a firefight, a gun battle outside that particular club, and made national news here. But then still the place remained open. Now you would think, and I, speaking from personal experience as a bar owner there, I was constantly hassled by the police who were coming in, measuring the distance between tables, checking the products I had were the right products, etc., etc., etc. Yet literally 10 minutes away from my business, there was a whorehouse operating full on. and they did nothing about it. So maybe there's that old thing, are they connected? Do they have connections within the police? Do they have that? All these things are allegedly, of course, but you have to ask these questions. What's maybe more telling is the Spanish government itself, that when they did come into power, they had to get into bed with the Sumar party, which is the far left party here in Spain, run by a lady called Yolanda Diaz. Now, she's very much in for female rights and things like that, and did a lot of campaigning for equality and things like that. And one of the things was talked about when she first came into power with the government, and they started to address it and talk about it, was prostitution. Now, that debate seemed to have disappeared of late, and I don't know why. But what is maybe more telling and shows you how deep the issue is here is recently the Prime Minister, who's been involved in many scandals, be it his wife, his brother, and many of his ministers. It was uncovered that his father-in-law allegedly owns a chain of whorehouses. Now, how true that is, I've heard that from several things, and I've read that on various pages. But maybe that demonstrates the problems we have here in Spain and how to address it. As I said before, I would personally look at either legalizing it, but making sure these women are protected. Make sure there's no human trafficking going on. Make sure there's no abuse going on. The last thing we want is women being illegally brought into the country and then forced to work off these things, which you tend to hear about in these country brothels. And if anybody's ever seen the movie From Dusk to Dawn, they probably look a little bit like that, but not so Hollywood. Right, I'd like to know everybody's take on prostitution, because it is an interesting subject. It's one that people tend to turn a blind eye to. So what's your opinion? Please subscribe to the channel. We appreciate a like on the video, and I'll speak to you soon. You have yourselves a good day.